Welcome to Cognitive Liberty. I'm your host, Clyde Lewis. This show is brought to you by TLB TV and the Liberty Beacon Project.
Hi, everybody. I'm Clyde Lewis, host of Cognitive Liberty, and you're watching this video podcast on the Liberty Beacon TV network. And we're very, very happy to be here today with someone who I think you'll want to hear from. The reason why is because of some innovation that, all the time, most of the time when I do my shows, my other show, which is Ground Zero, I always try to bring new ideas and try to bring them to fruition and expose those who are bringing forward ideas that are benefiting everyone. And my guest today is Daniel Lewis Crumpton, who is an author, producer, and also a spokesperson for something called CannaSense. And I think it's important that we bring this message to the people. Right now is a time where we're living in a time of propaganda. And a lot of the propaganda is about drugs and about opiates and about the opiate epidemic, people overdosing on opiates, people getting bad opiates, fentanyl. And I think what's wrong with that is that this is part of a culling process where, big pharma is actually poisoning the population, and those who wind up becoming addicted to these medications, they end up dying, and there's no help for them. If they can't afford rehab, there's no help. And that's why I think it's very important that CannaSense is here. But first of all, Daniel, I'm talking about CannaSense, but I would like for you to kind of explain a little bit what this is all about and why it's such a great idea.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for having me on Cognitive Liberty. I like the name of the show and the concept of it. But, every time I talk to you, I got to mention that whenever your name comes up or your show comes on the radio, it always takes me back to my early 20s when I was working at a place called Media Play, having to shrink wrap The Dark Side of the Moon with The Wizard of Oz. Who figured this out? Who's responsible for me having to do this? But that set me on a path in my life. That thought that the synchronicity thing, and who would have thought we'd be talking now years later? Because
I appreciate that. I try to keep a low profile with that, but whenever somebody asks, I tell them how it all started and why how I was involved with this and how it went from Boston to the entire world. You just don't. Synchronicity has been something that I've been doing, syncing songs, syncing movies. But I think synchronicity also happens with people, and it happens with those I meet. And you're one of those synchronicities in my life that the response to what you're involved with, Daniel, was overwhelming when we first talked about it. And I couldn't believe how many people out there are in pain and they need things to help them get through the day. So I really appreciate what you said, but I really think you're the guy right now. You're the man. You're the star. I need to I'm just so excited for what you're involved with. Go ahead. I can't keep it in. You have to tell everybody.
Well, with the synchronicity and the exponentiation of, I guess, somehow over the years, us feeding off of each other. After I did Ground Zero with CannaSense, you have to understand, CannaSense was laying kind of low for like 2 years. They were operating, and it was kind of a mystery. Look, we found a way through existing legislation to get people who were in need medication lawfully and legally, and we didn't understand why it didn't blow up. And it was just the alignment of the stars. It had to be the right people with the right mindset, all coming together with their resources to get it out there. And of course, after Ground Zero, we had a massive influx. And it wasn't just Ground Zero. It was a collaborative work of a lot of people in the collective to make them aware that, hey, there is a way for you to pursue cannabis as a medicine in opposition to big pharma and all these opioids and things like that are just killing people left and right. So it caused a massive influx. And CannaSense is a small outfit. It's getting bigger, so we had to adjust. But you're absolutely right, man. I'm on the phone or on email or on Facebook Messenger or on Skype with people every single day, Clyde. And I'm telling you, it is my involvement with CannaSense is emotionally tolling. It has its ups and its downs. You hear people, I mean, you're on the phone crying with people every day who say, "You've saved my life. You know, you helped me have hope again." Uh, and then you're also on the phone, you know, laughing with people who said, you know, for 20, 30 years, now I don't have this pain in my hand, in my hip, in my side, or I can keep food down, or my mom who has terminal cancer, and she at least is being alleviated of pain. And so when we look at this, and people like you and me and your audience and everything, we don't have to be convinced that cannabis is a medicine. You know, we're already there. We know that. And so what I think that is incumbent upon us is we're at a point in human history, in American history, where a change can be made in a nonviolent way to where with the whole idea of liberty. Let me sidetrack. I'm a Virgo, so I go around the lake. You got to forgive me.
I understand. I'm a pitiful Pisces. I know how it is to be sensitive. Try to have a tough veneer, and it really sucks sometimes.
Yeah. So it's like with decriminalization of cannabis, or approaching cannabis, up until CannaSense came along, it's been a vice in our thinking that we are David versus Goliath, and that we have to. It's going to be a huge uphill struggle in order to see some type of rational, logical application of cannabis in this country. And it seems almost like an insurmountable mountain. But after CannaSense came along and they brought me in and they connected these dots in legislation that already exists, it caused a shift in thinking in not only my mind, but in everybody else's mind who's been hearing about CannaSense. And it's that, wait a second, we don't have to do a top-down refit of the legal structure to get access to medicine and get others access to medicine. We don't have to do that. We don't have to have things branded a certain way in open court of law. And like, you know, we tried to do this the other day, and what I was trying to say was freedom and liberty, they don't ever really go away. The ideals and the principles that are in the Constitution, we don't have to win them back. We just have to dust them off. So it's when you start to look at it that way, and you understand that the founding fathers knew that eventually we were going to reach a point where over legislation was going to try to choke the republic. They designed the Constitution in such a way that where all we have to do is, once we understand the spirit of it, and we on an individual level own liberty and own freedom and start walking in that liberty and freedom, then there's no big battle that has to happen. All that has to happen is brush fires in the minds of men.
Well, see, I agree with you. I think, you say dust off the Constitution. I would say that if people apply it without using it as what I call a cudgel. Many times you hear people, I've got free speech, I can say what I want. Not necessarily. I mean, you have a responsibility, or I have a right to own a gun, and that's about where it stops. Free speech and owning a gun. That's all they know of the Constitution. Why? Because the first two lines, well, they don't even know the preamble. So you have to know the preamble, then they go through their rights, and they only stop at about 2. But many people don't know that there's other things like due process and jury of your peers, and where you have control of the law, where you can decide how the law is. The law is by the people for the benefit of the people. Mm-hmm. The idea is to, what they say in the preamble, they say, secure the bonds of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Mm-hmm. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all of these things. And I was, and in fact, I was saying the last time I was with you, that I kind of like what Robert Anton Wilson said about freedom. He said that people are truly free when they're left alone by the government, when they can get for themselves fresh food, good food, nutritious food, clean water to both drink and bathe in, and to be out of pain. Mm-hmm. So pain can be psychological, pain can be physical, pain can be psychosomatic, it can be a lot of things. But one thing that you're hearing now from the government, one thing you're hearing now from Big Pharma is that people who are in pain are dying because they don't know how to treat it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to help people. They're not even trying to. All they do is they write out a prescription, you get it filled, and then either you have the luck of the draw of becoming addicted to it, or you become dependent on it. There's a difference between being dependent on something and then being addicted to it. Dependent is where you have pain, you take a pill. Addiction is when you have pain, it goes away, and you keep taking the pills because your body feels that it's going to die if it doesn't have those. And eventually it does die because it can't be satiated. And the truth of the matter is, I believe, Daniel, that what you're doing with CannaSense is a solution, at least to one of those factors, and that is keeping people out of pain, keeping them content. Because look, when you're out of pain, you're balanced. And so if you're smoking cannabis, or you're taking it as a CBD, or there are different ways to actually use this and use it in a beneficial way to cure some of the elements, the inflammation, all of these things. There's a whole group of things that if we were to study it, we would be able to, I think, solve a lot of our problems. But they moved it to Schedule 1, so now we can't do that. People are still caught up in this whole, it's against the law. People who don't understand marijuana are the biggest opponents of it because they've never had to go through the problems of pain. And it's funny because when we did the show at first on Ground Zero, people who listened to you, who wouldn't normally even consider using marijuana as an alternative to opiates, are more intrigued by it and are realizing the benefit of what this is, and the benefit of how they don't have to worry about being under the iron fist of the law when the laws themselves are crumbling and the drug war is a failure. Yeah. And that's why I think it's amazing that, and timing is everything. You know that, Daniel. Timing is everything, and the timing of this couldn't be any more better. It's just amazing how the pieces all fit together.
Well, ironically enough, I rarely get to read fiction for fun anymore, but I'm reading a novel, a vampire novel, and the whole crisis in this vampire novel is they said no society or organization based in secrecy can survive the internet age. Right. And it's ironic that we're talking about blood drinkers, who are afraid of the internet age, because we're in an age where nothing can really be concealed or hidden anymore. And when you talk about cannabis as a medicine, the Declaration of Independence says the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And a part of your happiness is your well-being. And I'm sorry, but after 9/11, we are all, as a society, traumatized. All of us are traumatized.
We haven't had a chance to heal. And that's another thing that I worry about, because when you look at trauma, I mean, if you were to analyze trauma from a psychological standpoint, they tell you that first with trauma, you're shocked. Mm-hmm. Then you're in denial. Then you get angry. And then eventually you have to realize that it's saving you, or having to save yourself from going off the deep end. We now in this country have gone through, or we haven't really gone through the healing process after 9/11. And that is why we're troubled, we're traumatized, and we look at each other as the enemy, because we blame each other. We're blaming each other for the trauma that we've had. And the biggest problem in the healing process is the government. They think that it can be business as usual after an entire country suffers trauma. It can't. And I think this division we're having, the feeling, the victim, the cottage industry of victimhood is a threat to our cognitive liberty. The idea that your mind, freedom is a state of mind. And if your mind is troubled, you're not free. And that's why your state of mind needs to change. Your cognitive liberty needs to be addressed, because the minute they start messing with your head, the minute they start, taking away your ability to get rid of pain, it's when I draw the line and I say, look, I don't want to go through my days being in pain, and I will do anything in my power that's safe to get the pain to be taken away, whether it be physical therapy, whether it be, using CBDs from marijuana or from cannabis, or smoking it, or whatever I need to do to get out of that pain. Mm-hmm. I will do it. Right. And the law is not going to stop me from doing something that's not harming anyone.
Well, thankfully, and like with CannaSense, after I did Ground Zero with you, and we had this overwhelming interest in CannaSense and people who wanted to become a member of the collective. Obviously, when I explained last time that CannaSense is operating through what they call the trifecta, the Compassionate Use Act of '96, telemedicine, and the Reciprocity Clause. On my website, downloadedcontent.com, I've tried to make it as easy to enroll and understand, because what people need to understand about CannaSense is it's not just about getting you access to your medicine. It's about getting you the principles of freedom and liberty. Those of us who are at the heart, who are beating at CannaSense, we feel that well-being and the notions of liberty and freedom instilled in the Constitution go hand in hand. So we as a collective are trying to make these concepts of freedom and liberty clearer to people. So as a result of that interview on Ground Zero, I did 4 videos, and people can find them at downloadedcontent.com under the CannaSense Total Wellness page. The first 4 videos is, if you know nothing about CannaSense, I'll explain CannaSense, how it works through existing legislation, and then how to enroll, how to get a sponsor, how to upload your documents, and all of that. And then I felt the necessity, because there has been, Clyde, it's funny because there are people out there who, no matter what you show them, they still have a mentality of servitude and slavery to the state. So I could show somebody 50 laws that clearly say that, that what CannaSense is doing is lawful, and they still will say, but that's a mentality. And it's
and another thing too is that I believe that there is a stereotype involved here. A stereotype where most people have this Cheech and Chong mentality about weed, about cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it. So we have this stereotype of the hippie, the lazy person, the person who doesn't get out and do anything. They just sit back, eat their Cheetos, and smoke marijuana. What needs to happen is, I believe the stereotype needs to be destroyed by having more and more people be open about the fact that when it comes to pain relief, that they do not use opiates, that they would rather use something that's safe. We need to have more information out about how safe it is. And and all hope is not lost, in my opinion, because I've heard a lot of police officers and those who are involved with the DARE program and other groups literally coming out now and saying that the drug war was a failure.
Oh, yeah.
And what we're fighting against is people like Jeff Sessions, who still live in the 20th century, not realizing that now the growing of cannabis has become so amazing that they've been able to have strains that do certain things or make you feel a certain way or deliver the type of feeling you need in order to get through the day. And I'm fortunate that I live in an area where cannabis is legal.
Right.
I mean, it's legal statewide. I mean, federal, of course, the feds still have their heads in their south end and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But eventually, I believe that they're going to legalize or at least decriminalize in a lot of areas cannabis. But the problem is that they're going to try and destroy the independent grower because they have a surplus somewhere in Uruguay that's genetically modified and they want to push it on the public. And yeah, go ahead.
It's funny that you mentioned that this is kind of the main thing that I really wanted to focus on. The federal government, maybe perhaps unbeknownst to them, they have decriminalized it, but I don't think they realize it. And as a result of doing Ground Zero and all this interest, me and my sponsor in CannaSense, Ted Metz, he's a great guy. I've marched side by side with him in the Ron Paul campaign and some other campaigns. He's the chairman of the Libertarian Party here in Georgia. He's a true liberty-minded guy, and we have a lot of deep philosophical discussions, and so we're both promoting CannaSense. But one night, what I call the Metz maneuver kind of came out of this conversation that he and I had, and it's the 4th video on the website that I'm really pushing out there. And what's funny about the Metz maneuver, which I want to simplify it for people, and I want to push it out there in the consciousness of people, because if I believe, and I'm already starting to see, that the Metz maneuver is starting an awakening, and it's very simple. And essentially what the Metz maneuver is it's real simple. He and I were having a conversation. And I said, look, while I'm doing these videos, Ted, I need you to explain to me, because I'm not a cannabis enthusiast. I'm not one of these guys who can tell you what this strain is, not a
Yeah, you're
connoisseur.
not a hobbyist. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
hobbyists can be a little too much. I mean, it's like it would be like me sitting down and describing different ways that I can take hydrocodone. It doesn't.
Mhm.
I don't care.
Yeah, I know.
I don't care that you can like ground it up and snort it. I don't care.
Yeah.
All I care about is give me the facts, give me the basics, and tell me how I can improve my life without abusing something.
Right, right. And that's the way, I know it works for me. I know it works for my creativity, my PTSD and things like that. But he's like really into it. He knows the history of all of it. So I go to him for information. So I said, Ted, explain to me the basis of law for the controlled substance having a schedule. And he said, okay, well, great. He says, well, if you go back to 1937, and I might be screwing up some facts, so please forgive me, but you'll get the general idea. He said, if you go back to 1937 and you look at the Marijuana Stamp Act, basically the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, they had this patent for nylon, which was useless if you have hemp in the picture. So in order to kind of get rid of the competition, they instituted the Marijuana Stamp Act, and it put a license and a fee on the production of hemp. And then, of course, in 1969, you get Timothy Leary, who comes along and goes before the Supreme Court and says, well, wait a second. You have a license and a fee for this. And according to Marbury versus Madison, which is one of my favorite Supreme Court cases, and I think every liberty-minded person needs to have that case memorized. Marbury versus Madison is the go-to ruling in your bat belt if you're going to be going up against unconstitutional legislation, because essentially what it says is any law that is written that contradicts the Constitution, even if one part of that law is unconstitutional, the entire law is null and void of law. It has no power to enforce. The citizen has no obligation to obey. It's a nullity and a fiction. It does not have to be branded unconstitutional in open court of law. It's unconstitutional before the ink dries. So I always try to pound home Marbury versus Madison. And that's what Timothy Leary used to have the Marijuana Stamp Act knocked out. Well, of course, the powers that be were in a mad scramble. We got to get a hold of this cannabis, So they, based on racist, I mean, the whole marijuana thing is based off of racism anyway. We know that.
Of course. In fact, you forgot one important part of history, and that is the lumber trade, and also William Randolph Hearst, who was probably one of the most significant figures in the vilifying, if you will, of marijuana or of cannabis, because he would put out the propaganda that it was bad. In fact, they named it marijuana because they wanted to associate it with Latinos, because of the, Latinos have always been the scourge, I guess. And even today, we're talking about immigration in a way that, once again, we scourge people because they're suspicious brown people, I guess. These are the things that have been done in the past, and it's all because of the fact that big money makers were seeing a loss, and that is why that's another reason why it's being vilified now, is because big pharma wants to addict everyone to their medications, and then they'll provide another panacea that will certainly help them again. So more drugs on the market to get you off opiates. It's a never-ending vicious cycle. First, they kill off a bunch of people and basically use it as an example. And then they turn around and say, you don't want to die, do you? Well, here's a way to get off opiates. We have a new drug on the market ready to go that is going to satiate. And see, that's another thing, too. I did a show about kratom, which many of us who know people who are trying to get off opiates, they use kratom. They were going to Schedule I kratom and make it illegal. And that's the thing, is it's not, it's a sort of a form of tea leaf. They said, well, it's another problem. It's a problem getting people off medication safely and naturally. So I mean, go back to big pharma and say, what do you got for me? What iatrogenic artifact do you want to feed me that was supposed to be a cure, but it'll eventually kill me?
Right.
And that's what irritates me, is that people don't realize that big pharma doesn't care about you. All they care about is profits from the diseases and the problems that they've created with their other medications.
Yeah, right. And a lot of these charity organizations too, when they ask, oh, donate $1 for diabetes or cancer, and I'm like, well, there's already a cure. But if I can, let me get back to the Mets maneuver because I really don't want to. This is something I want people to really understand. So in this discussion with Ted about this, he said he said basically when the Controlled Substance Act was instituted in 1971, that's where your scheduling comes from. Well, Clyde, when's the last time you looked at the DEA schedule?
Well, I had to prepare for a show, so that would be like maybe a month ago, 2 months ago.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at it, and I guess whenever you guys broadcast this, you can put the links into it. So I'm at the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency's website, deadiversion.usdoj.gov. And I'm going to read you Title 21 very, very quickly. Section A says, there are established 5 schedules of controlled substances to be known as Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Such schedules shall initially consist of the substances listed in this section. The schedules established by this section shall be updated and republished on a semi-annual basis during the 2-year period beginning 1 year after October 27, 1970, and shall be updated and republished on an annual basis thereafter. Section B is what I really want people to focus on. Except where control is required by the United States, obligations under an international treaty, convention, or protocol in effect on October 27, 1970, and except in the case of an immediate precursor, a drug or other substance may not be placed in any schedule unless the findings required for such schedule are made with respect to such drug or other substance. The findings required, that's the key word, for each of the schedules are as follows. So these, and how I want people to think about this is in legal terms. Take a footstool with 3 legs, Clyde, and the basis for requirement, okay, to put cannabis in a Schedule 1 is based off of 3 required legs. So if we knock out 1 leg, it's over, okay? So under Schedule 1, it says, A, the drug or other substance has a high potential for abuse. Well, I'm not going to really go for that one, even though, government studies show it's less than 9% of people who may possibly develop a problem, a dependency problem. So that's stupid. But B is the one we really want to look at. B says the drug or other substance has no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States. Now, that is the leg that if we knock that leg out, the Schedule 1 of cannabis is gone, and we don't have to wait for them. So after Ted had me read that, he said, and I know you probably know about U.S. Patent 6630507. You're familiar with that patent?
Well, remind me. I know a lot of them, but remind me what that one's about.
It's the United States Health and Human Services filed in 2001 with the government for a patent on cannabis as an antioxidant and a neuroprotectant.
So, I remember that, and that's the thing is that they ignore that completely. And another thing too about Schedule 1, when you put a drug in, or you put a substance in a Schedule 1 category, what you lose is you lose federal funding to examine the benefits and the pros and cons of using the substance. Mm-hmm. So they can go ahead and say all they want that it's dangerous. They can say it's bad, and they can have people who are their own paid scientists to write out their own scientific analysis that fits their criteria. And that's the problem, is if we can at least get it off Schedule 1 status to provide ways by which you have colleges and you have groups and individuals that can get grant money to actually study it and give us, the truth. And that includes the truth on both sides, because as you said earlier, there are people out there that are hobbyists that will just swear by everything, that it's a cure for this, it's a cure for that, it's the miracle cure. And the thing is there's nothing provided in I guess you could call it an official form, and I hate saying that because I don't want my government to be the official word on anything. I mean, look what they're doing with Monsanto and global warming and all this other nonsense. I would like to have a non-political, nonpartisan view, and one where the technocracy isn't trying to take down people who use a substance that's benefiting them.
Well,
And
I'm
it's the
glad you brought that up.
technocracy that we have a problem with, I believe. The technocracy is what's destroying our ability to help ourselves and to be healthy.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because in conjunction with that patent, April of this year, if you go to cancer.gov, so this is your federal government. If you go to cancer.gov/about cancer and you look up cannabis and cannabinoids, they've updated cannabis, the National Cancer Institute and the National Institute of Health. And amongst many of the updates that they've showed proof of, let's see, I'm going to scroll halfway down the page here. They actually admit that cannabis has been shown to kill cancer cells in the laboratory, and there are links to the studies. So we have the federal government with the patent and with their own research and on their own website stating unequivocally that now cannabis does have known medical uses. Now,
Well, I say that's the thing is without the test, we can't find out what part of cannabis is curing cancer, what part of cannabis gets rid of what they call inflammatory cytokines. See, that's one of the reasons why our country is depressed, because we're suffering. We live in a toxic environment, Daniel, and that's we live in a toxic environment, so our body responds to the toxicity in a form of what are called inflammatory cytokines. And so when the body is inflamed and when it's swollen half the time, we swell, we retain water, we do all these things. And Americans don't really know that it's happening to them. It's one of the reasons why we're obese. It's one of the reasons why all these things are happening to us, because we don't realize that our body is reacting to the toxic environment. And so if we find out whether it's the THC, the CBD, or some other process that's creating this anti-inflammation, then we know what part of the plant or what part of it we can synthesize or otherwise create that would benefit people with cancer, that would help them. I mean, I know that, when I had cancer, I was able to use it, and it did help me feel better about eating and help me feel better about the pain. In fact, it was far more effective than the Dilaudid they gave me to take. And because someone came by and said, try this, and I'm serious. I was taking Dilaudid, and I could still feel the pain throughout my stomach because, of course, they cut in to get the kidneys and fix them. But when I had the cannabis, all that was gone. I wasn't like, how when you become deliriously high if you get a lot in your system. I was not deliriously high. I was functional. I could do the things I wasn't able to do before. And so the stereotype of everybody on pot's going to be high, everybody on pot can't drive, everybody on pot. I mean, people take opioids. They take like maybe 2 or 3 a day, or 2 or 3 an hour, every 3 hours, 4 hours, okay? And they're driving a vehicle. But does anybody bring that up? No. If somebody's on some other, even Benadryl, okay? You could take Benadryl for an allergy. It could be enough to make you, your response time in a vehicle slower. And yet, but the stigma here is, and I've heard other conservative talk show hosts and others who can't stand the thought of people smoking marijuana saying things like, well, of course, the increase of people driving under the influence of this drug is going to, well, why don't they ever address the idea that I know this for a fact, 60% of people on the roads today are either drunk or they're on some sort of opiate or on some other drug that limits their ability to respond in traffic. And so if people are smoking marijuana, I mean, that's why the big myth is, well, people are going to be driving under the influence. If everybody's under the influence of something when they're behind the wheel of a vehicle. And that's what's terrifying. They don't want to tell you that, but they want to make an example and a stereotype out of those who use cannabis. And that's
yes. Sure. And when you have a for-profit industrial prison system in this country that has a vested interest in putting people in cages for victimless crimes, they're not going to be so readily eager to admit that, these things are just facts. But what I would propose, I mean, and whenever me and Ted were talking about this, and especially the National Institute of Health coming out and listing medical uses, he said, do you understand that now if a law enforcement officer or some type of an authority tells you that cannabis is a Schedule 1, that's a fraudulent statement. because one of the requirements is it has no known medical uses. But here we have the federal government on 2 occasions buying a patent and admitting that it does now have known medical uses.
Right.
So to say that cannabis is a Schedule 1 is fraudulent. And so when this epiphany kind of hit me, I called it the Mets maneuver. And in my opinion, approaching things from this point of view, like Marbury versus Madison, which is we don't have to wait for the DEA to get their schedule correct. We're looking at the schedule. There's 3 requirements. The federal government has nullified the most important one, no known medical uses. They admit now on official government documents, it does have medical uses. So it's not our fault that DEA hasn't updated their schedule. So here's where my thinking kind of went. And I thought it was funny. And I made a joke about it on the video. I said, is it possible that there could be a class action lawsuit for anyone who suffered any punitive damages as a result of this scheduling? And could we somehow, I'm not a lawyer, but I know there are attorneys in the liberty movement. Is there a way that a class action lawsuit against the DEA could start? And, is it possible that in the near future I may be suicided? If so, it was fun. Don't let it be in vain. And I put that out there, and I think it's great because to me, I mean, I live at the law of the land. You know what I'm saying? To me, this makes sense.
You know what you have to do is you have to find a lawyer who's willing to create the class action lawsuit on behalf of people of color, because there's an inordinate amount of people in jails who have possession of cannabis who are Black, who are Latino, and we're in this myriad of racist dialogue where it's the unequal factor. There are Black people that demand action and they demand rights and they demand this because the police have inordinately harassed them or made them feel inferior. But the biggest problem is not that. The biggest problem is suspecting or at least marking a group of individuals and putting them in jail for use of this drug or this not drug but medicine. And that's the problem. And I don't know if you know this or not, but since we last spoke, here in Oregon, they have voted to defelonize people or defelonize the act of having a small amount of methamphetamine or heroin in your possession.
Really?
And we did a whole show on that on Ground Zero a while back, and believe me, it was riveting because people have these stereotypes involved where they think that people who are using methamphetamine or using heroin are lost causes. And at least it gave us an opportunity to actually talk about alternatives to jailing people. And that would be looking out for their health. It's a health problem. The drug abuse is a health problem. It's not a criminal issue. It's a health problem. And once again, we go back to the answer to all things, and that is if people had an alternative like marijuana or cannabis, and the other alternative too, back to the cognitive liberty thing, the other alternative is something called the lack of bonding, the lack of having understanding with someone else, the lack of love, the lack of oxytocin, which is they call the love chemical.
Yeah.
Where you can pet a cat and get an oxytocin high. Yeah. You can hug someone and get an oxytocin high. And that's one of the things about cannabis is it gives you that oxytocin feeling. And I don't see a problem with us all using oxytocin to feel better and happier. And that's the problem, is they don't give us enough healing and assuring words. All we hear about is that we're pissed off. We're against everything. We don't stand for anything anymore. We're against it. And everything can be taken care of with a push of a button and a bomb and a shooting or something to take care of the problem. Due process is non-existent. Keeping people from those things that help them benefit their lives, that's difficult too. And I think it needs to stop. I think people need to stop thinking, well, this is the way of the world and this is how it has to be. It doesn't have to be this way. And that's one of the reasons why I applaud what it is you're doing and what CannaSense is doing, because it literally is taking on the system and saying, look, we see your flaws. We see the flaws in your system. We see the flaws in your logic. We see the flaws in how you treat other human beings. And you need to start thinking about a future where people are more capable of doing things because of the fact they're out of pain and because all of the physical handicaps they have been tranquilized.
Right.
And that would make for a better system altogether.
Yeah, and you know, it's amazing to me. CannaSense it is bringing together the right type of people. And you know, like after I put those videos out and I coined the Mets maneuver and kind of put the idea out there that we should be proactive with this, and we should, you know, start some type of a through the law, start some type of a class action lawsuit on this scheduling thing. You know, I was surfing the web and I found an article regarding the schedule and it being a fraudulent statement, and they were citing my words and showing pictures from my video. And then I found out that there was a gentleman who spoke at a university in South Carolina in front of some college students the other day using the Mets maneuver. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, because it goes back to how we started this, was your ability to perceive the synchronicity of Pink Floyd and the Wizard of Oz started a chain reaction in the consciousness. And then you get somebody like me and people who think like me, and then it perpetuates. And so
that's the whole point is, you know, we have to realize that sometimes we do things that I mean, we really do make an imprint
we do
on society and on what we do. And, you know, I compare it to, you know, you can light a candle and have it at the other end of the room, and you can blow on it like this to the other end of the room, and you can wait a few seconds and you see it start flickering.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're clear the hell the other end of the room and you're blowing and you're trying to blow it out from there. It won't blow out, but it'll at least move.
Yeah.
So what little bit you do makes a difference on that candle and that light. So, you know, taking that light and shining it on the things that are corrupt, shining it on impunity, shining it on things that basically interfere with your ability to think and function, your cognitive liberty. This is important. It is vital for all of us to be participating in something that benefits us, not something that we continually have to invest our emotional well-being into, investing and not getting returns.
And I think what people really need to get a hold of is that liberty and freedom, yeah, you can get a group of liberty-minded or free people together, but it has to begin with the individual. It has to begin with you. You have to stop expecting permission from on high to act, walk, and live in your liberty. You have to look in the mirror and you say, you know, come what may, let the chips fall where they may, I will be free by God, and I will operate in that. I will do it. And, you know, and I've heard other people since I've started talking about this who are like, well, you're putting people in harm's way because this may be illegal here or there. And I'm like, look, that's what freedom is, being in the way of harm. That is what freedom is.
Well, taking risks too.
Taking risks.
A lot of people are afraid to take risks. And believe me, because that's one of the reasons why I think our country is in the state it's in, is because they made it difficult for normal people to take risks in this country and to do something bold. When was the last time you heard of anything bold being done? You know, somebody stepping forward and saying, well, against all odds, they stood up for something. Like Ed Snowden, for example. You know, he was the guy that he told us everything we already knew, but at least he said something. And that's why people go, he's a traitor, he's this. I'm like going, dude, you knew that all this was happening. It just took one guy to come forward and say, yeah, it's happening. And that's the thing, is that, you know, first we have the conspiracy theory. We have the maligning of those in the margins that see things happening before they happen, and they talk about them. But then when they do happen, and finally people admit after all the denial that something needs to be done, you know, and it doesn't happen. I made this analogy the other day when I was on the air about getting people to do something. I used to DJ church dances and high school dances when I was younger. That's why I'm in radio, I guess. It's because I was playing stereos. Now I play a 50,000 watt stereo every night and speak to 2.5 million people. But I was telling them that when I was doing dances back when I was, you know, in my 20s, I'd say, you'd play music, okay? And here you have an empty dance floor for 2 or 3 songs. And then one couple gets out and they dance. They're the only couple on the floor that's dancing to a song. And you're thinking, gosh, I must suck. I mean, I'm not playing the right kind of music because nobody wants to dance, right?
Yeah.
But then you have another couple get up and dance with the other couple that's on the floor. It isn't until the third dancer or the couple that gets on the floor that we see people all get on there and go, okay, it's all time and okay to dance. So what needs to be done is, you and I, we're the couple that's dancing on the floor and the music's playing. We need more people to come onto the floor. So a whole group of people who want to dance with us.
It's like
And,
Mark Twain said.
Yeah.
Mark Twain said, in the beginning, a patriot is a scarce man, hated and reviled until his cause starts to succeed. Then everybody jumps in, right? Because there's no skin in the game for those people. And of course, I butchered that quote, but you get
We all butcher Mark Twain. He's amazing.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. And what's great about CannaSense is, when the fact that they do offer legal representation, if any, and so far none of our members have had any trouble at all. Now, I did volunteer to be a guinea pig, and I think it's very ironic that I did that, and then I released those videos about the Schedule I being fraudulent. And I don't know if your producer told you or not, but my YouTube channel was hacked. I have no access to it anymore, so that those videos are out there.
You've heard also that YouTube now has demonetized any video that they see as defiant or rebellious, but rebellious and defiant to what? An ideology that seems to be pervasive enough to create what is called the resistance. And I'm like, yeah, okay, what are we resisting against? Nobody knows what they're fighting against. They just know they're fighting. And rather than fighting, we need to come together and come up with something that we benefit from, not something that's going to destroy property or harm people or get them gassed with tear gas. That's not fighting. That's just, spinning your wheels and acting stupid. But when you organize, and as I said, the dancers need to get on the dance floor and start dancing just like nobody's looking. And so that's why I think it's important we dance. I think it's important that we get other people to. And I think that as it builds and it builds, and that's why, once again, going back to the CannaSense idea, what we've done, or what you've done, is we have organized the dancers. And people, once they see that other people, and I remember when I did the show with you, Daniel, in the beginning, I had so many people, even people that I was so surprised that they were into what you had to talk about. People who would normally think that I'm out of my mind. I get a lot of people who disagree with me. That's okay, because I'm not here for people to agree, disagree with me. I want them to consider what I have to say, or consider what's said by other people they wouldn't normally hear. People were so responsive to what it was you were talking about, and people who I never thought would be responsive. I have normal callers who call in, and you can tell where they're going to go with it. They were supportive, and they were excited about something. First time I ever heard excitement in people's voices when they heard that they could get the type of medicine they need without worrying about legal troubles.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, man, I look back on my life, and I've been through a lot of trauma. And of course, when you're going through horrible times, you don't understand it, and you ask higher power or divinity or whatever, why? And it's only when you get on the other side, it was so that you could have empathy for other people. So I know what it's like to have PTSD, to be, a recovered alcoholic. I know what it's like. So looking back, I can see that I've been crafted to try to bring this message to people. And because I really do feel, and to be able to say, hey, look, we can get you some medicine as soon as next week to live a better life, to give you a second shot, and we'll help you if you run into legal trouble. And I know for a fact, Clyde, because I volunteered to be a guinea pig. I actually, on the 24th, I have to go before a state judge in Georgia to present these legal positions to a judge who kind of leans in our favor. And, the head of CannaSense, my sponsor, the attorneys are all flying down to stand with me, shoulder to shoulder. So some of these people who don't really understand what CannaSense is about, I know firsthand, this is a collective that we're on a mission. We are on a mission. But let me tell you this story real quick to try to give you an idea of where I'm at. When I was younger, when we were all younger, and there are rules and laws and things we don't understand, and we think that maybe when we become an adult one day we'll get it. But then we become adults and we go, where did this crap come from? Why are we still doing this archaic stuff that's scribbled on a piece of paper somewhere? I don't understand. Well, as a political activist in Georgia, I get arrested at the drop of a hat, any hat. And when you protest, the town trying to get a $150,000 tank in a small rural town, they tend to not like you. Well, So my police jacket's flagged, and if they can catch me walking across the street, jaywalking, they're going to put me in jail, which happens a lot. But one time, Clyde, which really pulled the veil open for me, I get arrested for being at a public park with my dog 10 minutes after curfew. I go and spend 3 days and 3 nights in a jail cell for this. Okay. Of course, I go on a hunger strike and I refuse to process. Well, this is a misdemeanor. And what people in the government are accustomed to is when cattle call comes for misdemeanors, everyone's either going to plead no contest or guilty to go ahead and pay their fee and get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And then here comes Mr. Crumpton. And of course, I say not guilty and I demand a jury trial. Okay. You could have heard a pin drop, Clyde, when the judges and the attorneys in the courtroom say, this is a misdemeanor. And I go, yeah, well, we don't think that you get a jury trial for this. I go, what are you talking about?
Constitutionally, you need one.
Yeah, I said the Bill of Rights says that in any controversy over $20, I get a right to a jury trial. I'm not lying to you, Clyde. The judge and the attorneys had to look at that, and all of them said, we need to have a recess because none of us have ever seen that before.
Well, what we're doing here in this country now is something called robot justice. And what I mean by that is that everybody gets a ticket or a fine or whatever, and they expect you to pay it. They don't expect you to fight. And so what they do is they put you in a long line. You write down what you're doing. You hand it to a processor who hands it to a computer, and the computer decides what digits you have to pay so you can get on with your life. And if you say you want a jury trial, oh, I'm sorry, our robots can't take care of it. We have to organize now and do something that's constitutional.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that bothers me is that the court systems now are just one big cattle call. That's all they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to have a trial. And that's why you hear about police officers shooting people, because it's extrajudicial executions. It's better to have an extrajudicial execution than it is to bring in somebody and try them. And I say, and people think, well, yours is so soft on crime. No, even scumbags deserve a trial.
Mm-hmm.
We gave one to the Nazis. We gave one to Saddam Hussein. Why is it that someone who's got marijuana on their person doesn't deserve a trial and gets thrown in jail if he can't provide these overextended bails? I mean, that's even constitutionally wrong. You're not supposed to get these $1 million bails, these sentences of $1 million here or $3 million here or whatever. That's over the top.
Yeah.
And unconstitutional. Believe it or not, it's unconstitutional to enforce these types of bails. Did you know here in Oregon, bail's illegal? We're not supposed to be able to have bail. So they don't give you bail, but they do have to give you money. You have to give money to get out. And they will throw all kinds of things on top of you unless a judge says that they have no charges against you. So it's kind of a weird system here. But, we have probably about 15 minutes right now to sum up and also to have you, and I want you to do this, explain to those who are watching this right now just what CannaSense is offering, what happens when you join, and why it's so important in the stream of consciousness with regard to cannabis and how it can help you rather than be a hindrance in your life.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for one thing, it's a matter of personal liberty. And it's a matter of starting with yourself and saying, I do have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which includes well-being. And cannabis is a medicine. Now, the Supreme Court has upheld in Byers versus United States that courts must liberally construe the Constitution in favor of the beneficiary, which is you and me, which means if you can pull a right out of the Bill of Rights, the courts are supposed to interpret it in your favor liberally, okay? And so it's not a matter of we have to convince them. It's a matter of we have to convince ourselves to use our freedom and liberty to pursue cannabis as a medicine. So to kind of summate what CannaSense is CannaSense is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that was founded by liberty-minded people who come out of the Ron Paul movement. So that's our thinking mechanism here. It's also been founded by people who have lost loved ones that could have been saved by cannabis use. And we see this as a massive injustice. So without being antagonistic to the state, utilizing and meeting them halfway, we've looked at the legislation, and basically what CannaSense does is we walk you through the process of becoming a California medical cannabis patient. The reason we chose California is because of the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, which is very well written, and it protects a member of a cannabis collective very well legally. So all of our members are California patients. Now, of course, people like me, I live in Georgia, never been to California. With Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, telemedicine was opened up to us. So like me, I'm a caregiver. What I do is I walk you through the process of setting up an appointment with a doctor in California via the internet. And according to the law, it's just as lawful as if you are physically in California.
I was just, in fact, to add to that, I was curious about this idea of telemedicine.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to some late night radio shows, there is a new group now that does telemedicine where a doctor can examine you via Skype, where you put yourself on video and you can show them what's wrong with you. And legally, they can prescribe medication for you, write you out a script, and basically you can take it to your pharmacy. So this is something that is, it was like back in the day when they first had online schools.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at an online college for a while. I was an admissions advisor at an online college. I did it because I thought online school would be the wave of the future. And it certainly is, because now they have homeschooling online where kids can attend for free and learn online. So the idea of an online doctor, that was unheard of. And people say, no, it's now becoming a widespread phenomena of telemedicine where, simple things, and the doctor will probably say to you as well, I can't take care of you over the internet. You got to go to a hospital. Of course, that's important. But if they can do simple things like prescribe cannabis, that's still legal because it's done.
Yeah.
Telemedicine is legal. It is.
Yeah. And I'm not going to, for the sake of privacy, I won't say who, but a mutual friend of all of ours recently went through this process and they were just in awe. They said that was incredibly easy and convenient and fast. And I said, that's it. Welcome to the new age, brother. And so, once you get your medical recommendation, your caretaker, which if people choose me to be the caretaker, or whoever they choose, I do say choose wisely. The videos on my website will explain all that. Once you're a lawful California patient, you upload your documents to CannaSense and you join our collective. You get access to clean cannabis in any form that you need it. If you want to vape it, if you want to do CBD drops, if you want the flower, if you want pretzels, we add to the inventory every single day. So there's a myriad of different ways for people to partake of their medicine. This is not about getting high. This is not about smoking pot. This is about finding what works for you so you could function, man, so you can live a productive life. And when you're a part of a collective, if you choose to do like me and several others and spread this message, you do get compensated. You'll get a little bit of compensation. It's tax-free because this is all volunteer work. But I'm going to tell you the rewards of being with CannaSense, to see minds opening up to freedom and liberty, and to see bodies being healed and minds being healed, that is the reward.
I want to talk about the legalities because a lot of people may be hesitant about the legalities. Your investment in CannaSense also provides you with legal counsel. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. If you go to CannaSense.com and read their guidelines and standards and all that, as a member of the collective, if the state moves against you, now we have had members who've had interactions with law enforcement, and typically when you show your medical card and your recommendation, they leave you alone. That's been kind of the limit to where the state's moved against anybody with us. However, if you are charged with anything, CannaSense will provide legal defense to exonerate you, because we're doing everything, as lawfully as we can.
And they'll fly out to you. They'll take care of you if we need to get the lawyers. They'll come out on their own and they'll help you.
Clyde, I'm telling you, we're on a mission, and the whole point of this collective is if you pick on one of us, you're going to have to deal with all of us. That's just the way that it is. I've got people who are volunteering to show up to my court date that don't necessarily need to be there, but to them, this is so important. And we're forming friendships. We're forming networking connections for the dissemination of freedom and liberty, for the dissemination of the truth about cannabis, to get this stigma of reefer madness. I mean, that is so Stone Age.
It is.
But yeah,
That's kind of an interesting way of putting it. It's stone age.
yeah,
The
right.
idea of being stoned is no longer a factor. The idea of being healthier and out of pain is the factor, not stoned, because now they have cannabis now that doesn't get you
Yeah.
stoned. It gets you feeling better and
Yeah.
gets you on your way to recovery and progress.
And hey, look, and for people who are pursuing cannabis as a medicine, you can pick the cannabinoids that doesn't have any THC in it. So, you know what I'm saying? It's really up to you. Um, Now, I will say this because I don't know how much time we have left.
Got a
If you
few
do,
minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes left.
all right, if people do go to downloadedcontent.com, all the information is on the CannaSense Total Wellness page with links to CannaSense. I will say you're going to need a sponsor. And this is going to be airing on the Liberty Beacon. So the Liberty Beacon is going to be kind of associated there. If by chance my name or number is locked into the sponsor field, it is going to ask you for a secondary sponsor. Put the Liberty Beacon in there, and that'll, that you'll be properly channeled in my network. So sooner or later, those patients will be able to have access to me. I am
Your
working on some
sponsor will
stuff.
be the Liberty Beacon then. That's,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, there'll be two fields, and one, they can put the Liberty Beacon in both, but if it is pre-locked, it says 663, which is my number. The secondary field asks you again who your sponsor is, and they can just type in the Liberty Beacon, and they'll be shunted underneath my network. I am working on some stuff with my website to be able to communicate with my collective at the drop of a hat
Mhm.
to get information out to people as quick as I can. But yeah, it's all self-explanatory on those videos. And if they go to the site and they want me or somebody in my collective to contact them, they can put their information in, phone number, email, whatever, and we'll answer all your questions to the best of our ability. We'll walk you through the process. A lot of my patients are elderly, so we have to help them, and we do. We don't mind. I just say, please be patient, because you can imagine how many people are coming to us. So if we don't answer your email or give you a call within 2 or 3 days, please be patient. We will get to you.
Yeah,
We
I
will.
heard that when we did the show with you on Ground Zero, you just got overwhelmed, swamped with people that needed to start up. And, it's because it was such a new, innovative idea that
Mhm.
everybody likes new and innovative ideas, and they most certainly will be a part of it. They feel there's a good benefit with them. And Daniel, we're out of time. Daniel Lewis Crumpton, thank you for being with us today on Cognitive Liberty. Once again, what is the website that they can go to? What is contact information they can go to get on with progress and be out of pain?
I would direct everybody, for the sake of information and convenience, to downloadedcontent.com. That's my main website. It's all my writing and podcasts and stuff like that, because I do podcasts and novels and things. But the CannaSense Total Wellness page at the top is dedicated to CannaSense. There's videos, links, and contact information all right there. And from that point, once I get you into my email list or my call list, we'll reach out to you and we'll take care of you from there.
Daniel Lewis Crumpton, thank you so much for being on Cognitive Liberty, and I'm sure everybody will want to at least look into this. Please do. A lot of hard work's going into this, and it's a way to free you up, make you feel better, and that's the whole point of Cognitive Liberty. Thanks again, Daniel.
Man, thank you, Clyde. I appreciate you getting the word out.
You bet. Take care.